Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the League of Women Voters of Ames and Story County Candidate Forum for the Iowa House races. For those of you who might not be familiar, the League is a nonpartisan but a political organization dedicated to encouraging citizens to be informed participants in their governments on the local, state, and national levels. Today is Tuesday, October 1, and tonight we have the privilege of meeting the candidates for the Iowa House of Representatives. This forum is being recorded and will be played on the League of Women Voters of Ames and Story County Facebook page and KHOI-FM 89.1 at a later date. I am Dr. Linda Sarah Hagedorn. I am a member of the board for the League of Ames and Story County, and the Vice President of the League of Women Voters of the state of Iowa. And I will moderate tonight's forum. Let's begin. All declared candidates for these offices have been invited to this forum. Tonight, we have with us, and we'll give them a chance will have a chance to introduce themselves and what district they represent in just a few minutes. The forum this evening will be divided into three sections. First will be the candidates' opening statements, and each of you will have 2 minutes for your opening statement, so use that to introduce yourself and say whatever it is for your opening. Then we'll take questions from the audience, and finally closing statements from the candidates as time allows. Audience members, if you have a question to ask these candidates, please raise your hand and a runner will bring you a card. And then I will read those questions to the candidates from the podium. Candidates, you will have 90 seconds each to give your response to the audience questions. Each question will be asked of all of you. So we will have kind of run it in a round robin format where each of you will have an opportunity to answer each of these questions. If there are questions yet to be asked as 8 p.m. approaches, audience questions will take priority over closing remarks. Otherwise, you'll have 2 minutes for a closing remark. In the tradition of the League of Women Voters, we want every candidate to have an equal say. So please do try to limit your opening remarks. Our timekeeper, Mr. John Klaus, will hold up a card when you have 30 seconds left in your time allotted. All right, we will start with the opening statements, and we will start with Ms. Vossler.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. 2 minutes, those of you who met me know I'm going to have to fly. I grew up on a farm and a ranch in Montana. My dad was an organic farmer way back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, he was ahead of his time and did very well at it. So I'm equally at home on a horse or a tractor. I left the farm and went to college because I was not a gambler by nature, and I could see that farming was definitely a gamble. You gambled on prices, you gambled on the weather, all kinds of things, and I wanted a job where I knew what my paycheck was going to be every month. My first degree was mathematics, and I went on to be a teacher. I taught math, computer science, and woodshop at small schools in both North and South Dakota, following my first husband's career. 2 children. I spent 13 years, a lot of it during my teaching years, as a volunteer EMT, so public service is in my nature. Both of those jobs are public service, by the way. Left teaching and went back to school for a computer science degree. Found myself working at the USGS Aerostatus Center, where NASA stores their satellite imagery, and worked my way up to associate scientist on a NASA satellite project. Followed another husband to Colorado, where I discovered GIS, and a fourth and final degree, master's in GIS. And that job, or that degree, brought me searching for a job around Ames, Iowa, where my son and his family. My very only grandchild was located. So I came to Iowa about 12 years ago for grandma time. That's a good reason to move somewhere. And I really enjoyed serving the people of Boone County as their GIS coordinator till I retired last year. At that time, I'd been paying attention to politics for a while, and I asked myself, who are these people representing in our legislature? Because it definitely was not me. I would have funded our public schools above the rate of inflation. I would have fed hungry children in the summer. I would have never voted to strip women of health care. I'm a survivor of a tubal pregnancy, and the procedure that saved my life decades ago is now illegal in the state of Iowa, and women will die. Young women, girls, they will die needlessly. It's already happening in other states. So this is something we need to work on, and we need to roll back. We have 30 seconds?
No, all right.
I'm all right? Okay. A lot of what I see in this legislature, they're bringing in bills from other states, and they seem to be a solution in search of a problem. This is not a problem. We did not need book banning in Iowa. And by the way, the good guys, book banners have never been the good guys in history. That's not the side you want to be on. But there's a procedure in place in all public school libraries where parents can say, I do not wish my child to read that book, and your child is not assigned that book or allowed to check it out from the library. So we had a procedure in place for that. What we have now is where one person gets to decide what books everybody's children can read. That's taking away our freedoms. We can do better for the people of Iowa, and we must. And we do that by electing Democrats who will put a brake on these policies, these agendas, these awful legislation that have been forced on us.
Thank you. Representative Wessel-Kroeschell.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for coming tonight. I know there are a lot of other distractions out there and lots of things that people would like to be doing, so I really appreciate everybody taking the opportunity to come out tonight and meet the candidates. I'd also like to thank the League. I was first elected in 2004, and I have been going to League forums as often as I can since then, and I know how important this is. It's really important for me to be able to meet you, and I appreciate all your questions and your interest in state government. It keeps me on my toes, because if I don't have these opportunities, I don't necessarily get to know what you're thinking. I am the ranking member of Health and Human Services, the Policy Committee. I also serve on Judiciary, Public Safety, the Justice Systems Appropriations Committee, and Appropriations. It has truly been an honor to serve. I have things in here. Some legislative priorities that are that the House Democrats are promoting that I truly support. First of all, I know Iowans and Americans are very concerned about the cost of living. Even as economic indicators improve, they are not necessarily hitting up the households. And we need to do something to help with everyday Iowans and how they address those economic issues. So that's a #1 priority. Reproductive health care is also a high priority for me. I've been working to preserve reproductive health care for many years, clearly unsuccessfully, but I will continue to do that because it is such a high priority for so many Iowans, and the current law that we have puts so many at risk, certainly for lots of medical issues, but as I have said over and over, under this new law, women will die. And education, we can't overemphasize the need to support our education system from the very beginning, early childhood, all the way through postgraduate work. Those have been suffering. Penny talked about the book bans, which are devastating for anyone, anywhere. We just simply can't be doing it. Iowa has a policy. Every school district has had a policy in place for books that parents have considered challenging or difficult for their children to read, and we have just totally ignored that and are now going to a different system. On top of that, we gutted our AEAs. The Iowa Republicans gutted our AEAs last year. And those are services that benefit all children, from children who struggle to learn to children who are high ability learners but struggle in school, so are talented and gifted kids. We have a lot of work to do. We are 5th worst for personal income growth. I got more to talk about, but I just got found out my time is up, and I am really looking forward to your questions.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to Mr. Cooper, Libertarian, District 49.
Hi, everybody. My name is Eric Cooper, and I'm the Libertarian candidate for District 49 here. I want to thank the League very much for inviting me here tonight. This is the 11th time I've run for the legislature, I believe, and this group has always invited me to their forum. And, you know, for third-party candidates, we're the first ones left off the invite list. So I want everybody to know what good folks they are here. That I want to hear from everybody, not just the major party candidates. Well, like I said, I'm a libertarian. What libertarianism is it's the philosophy of Thomas Jefferson. What Jefferson pointed out was that the government in any society is the institution that's allowed to use force, physical violence. There are some activities that require physical violence, and the reason why we have a government is in order to perform those activities. The activities that require physical violence are, first, protecting people from body crimes like murder and assault and rape. Secondly, protecting people from property crimes like theft and fraud and vandalism and pollution. Third, we need a government to enforce contracts when there's a contract dispute, so enforcing contracts is an activity. And fourth, there are some economic activities known as public goods that the market, for one reason or another, can't supply in the appropriate amount. Classic example would be like lighthouses, for example. You can't make a profit running a lighthouse, and so we may need a government in order to provide lighthouses. But those are the only 4 things that really require force. And having the government do anything beyond the specific activities that require force is a bad idea, because the government is a monopoly. And like all monopolies, it has very little incentive to be cost effective and very little incentive to please its customers. When we give more and more responsibility to the government, we're giving more and more responsibility to the least efficient institution in our society. So let me be very clear. I'm not saying that the things that government does now that aren't on my list of 4 shouldn't be done. What I'm saying is there's probably a better way of doing them than through the government. I hope tonight I'll be able to answer the questions the way Thomas Jefferson would have answered them if he had been here. And I want you to know the difference between the way I answer them and what the government has become. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to Mr. Wilburn, Democrat from District 50.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to the League for your work in citizenship and voter education. Thank you for everyone who's able to take some time to be here this evening, everyone who's tuning in, anyone who's listening on local radio. It's been an honor and a privilege to serve in 3 terms, running for my 4th term in the Iowa House of Representatives. It's been an honor to listen to the input, the feedback you all have given when you've reached out and contacted us, and I'm honored to try and represent you on the House Judiciary Committee, standing up for civil rights and the freedoms which have been under attack in the last few sessions. I'm also the ranking Democrat on that committee. I'm on the Veterans Affairs Committee and proud to have served as a veteran. I am on the Appropriations Committee and the Justice Systems. In addition to the input that you all give and the events that you host around town, I draw upon my experience having been a mayor and a 12-year city council member, draw on my experience as a youth worker for maybe about 15 to 20 years, working with youth and families and making sure that youth voice and views are elevated and that youth and adults are working together in partnership to improve our communities. along with my fellow Democrats and Republicans who have worked with us in some areas, looking to try and help keep costs low, to increase wages, to make sure that public dollars are being invested in public education and reproductive freedom, making sure that your medical provider, your doctor, and you are the ones in the room and not a representative or a governor in your decisions about family and health care, and for legalizing marijuana. My particular interest, and folks who've talked to me, is related to medical, but again, looking forward to hearing from you and answering the questions.
Thank you. Mr. Condon, Democrat from District 51.
Hello, thank you to the League for hosting this, audience for coming, my wife Marilyn for supporting me in this. I am a U.S. Army veteran, an ISU graduate, and I've worked for the state of Iowa for the last 17 years in different positions as a child support worker, a public defender investigator. Currently I'm working as a food assistance, Medicaid, and cash assistance worker. So I see a lot of what these policies that have been enacted over the last couple of sessions have really done to the people on the ground. I did not intend on getting into this race. I'm just a normal guy that was sitting around having coffee one morning with my wife, and I was complaining like usual about the news, asking how this could happen. And my wife had enough, and she told me to shut up or do something about it. So I did something about it, and I don't think this is what she meant. Many of the Democrats have already announced a lot of the issues that spurred me to action. So thank you for your questions.
Okay, thank you, candidates. Now I'm going to read questions from the audience. You will each have 90 seconds to answer each of these questions. The first question is going to start with Representative Wessel-Kroeschell. She's a Democrat from District 49. What can state government do to increase the supply of affordable housing?
Sure. We do put some money, actually very little of it is state money, that goes into affordable housing and the purchases I'm purchasing. I actually did a little bit of a study on this just, I think, a year ago. Almost all the money that we put in is federal dollars. It is time that we start looking at putting some state money into that. Unfortunately, in the past 8 years, we have cut back on the number of dollars we put into any programs to help people who are struggling in any way. But certainly we can put some money into to supplement the programming that we have with federal dollars.
Okay. Mr. Cooper?
Well, I think the way to lower the price of anything is to increase the supply of it. And so that's what we need to do, is increase the supply. And so that means in a lot of cases, letting the local governments, making them get out of the way. So for example, I think a lot of you are aware, Ames limited its lot size for new houses. And so people who want really big lots, you see like Huxley and Slater are growing because they allow big lots and Ames does not. What you get often when people move into a local area is they put some sort of restrictive land use laws like that increase their property values and decrease the amount of supply available. And so I think the key is to, I would say the state government should limit the local government's ability to put restrictions on lot sizes like that, just so that we can get more competition within the market, allow market forces to increase the supply.
Thank you. Mr. Wilburn, same question.
There's a couple areas that the state has tried to get involved. One is just with mobile homes and out-of-state owners who allow properties to erode, decay, not make the investment, raise up the price by 200% to 300% on the folks who are living there. There's been a bipartisan effort to try and limit that, but only partisan Republican efforts to have the state do nothing to try and address that particular issue. We've also tried to do some experimentation, or been looking into it on the Veterans Affairs Committee. We've been talking with and working with a couple organizations that are trying to address homelessness of veterans through the tiny home effort. The market doesn't take care of everything, and in terms of affordability, that's an issue with local where the private market has not taken care of it. It's driven up costs, and folks just don't have a place to that they can afford to live. Otherwise, I think we really have to take a look at how can we work in partnership with the private sector, with the public sector, and working with local officials, not taking away, being too restrictive on the rights of trying to have the state run everything, which has been an attempt by the major party right now, majority party, I should say.
Okay, Mr. Condon, affordable housing.
I would actually agree with Mr. Cooper. I would expand on that a little bit. I think that there are some regulations, some red tape that can be rolled back as well on the local level that is preventing affordable housing from being built. One of the other things that I also really believe in is we have to factor in the costs for building that housing. A lot of that labor, carpenters, electricians, plumbers, that sort of thing, we have a lack of those trades in the economy right now. I think that's something that we should expand in our high schools, try to get more of those tradespeople in the economy.
Lastly, Ms. Vossler, Democrat, District 48.
Okay, there's been some great ideas here, so I won't repeat those. I've come up with another one. I think the state should push rezoning, the communities to rezone and allow tiny houses, because a lot of those you can't build. I'm getting to the point in my life where I don't need a huge yard. I don't need, the kids are grown and gone. I don't need that much space. And I think that I could downsize quite happily, but you cannot build a tiny home in most of our communities. And that's behind the times, and it's really a growing trend. And whether they set up a subdivision specifically for these tiny homes, that would be one solution. But there needs to be first it has to start with the communities and their zoning. The counties and the cities will have to rezone to allow this to happen. But it takes far fewer materials, it's far cheaper. You can sell off the big house and live smaller.
Thank you. We're going to move on to question 2. Mr. Cooper, you'll be the first to answer this question. How can the Iowa legislature promote affordable child care for all Iowans?
Okay, well, the idea there is that that's just something that should be supplied by the market, so the market should do that. The question is, are there regulations that are getting in the way of people making that and being able to do that? I know when I was growing up in Kansas, I knew a lot of people who would, during the day, just have kids in their house that they would take care of. Stay-at-home moms would have something like that. And that's the sort of thing that could make it more affordable. I just think you cut the regulatory burden on people who are providing that service, and then you let market forces work. So no, the state doesn't have any role in subsidizing child care, but does have a role in getting out of the way so that people can provide child care affordably.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Wilburn, same question.
Sure. This is an area where the state can try and work in partnership with the private sector to have those public-private partnerships to try and provide an effective good tax credit for some of our medium to larger size businesses that are willing to provide childcare on site for their employees. That's something that maybe that qualifies them for a tax break, and that we can see that there's a return on that investment for the public. Trying to provide tax credit for those providers. If you're opening up your home to offer that, state's making sure that we've got the training and accessibility for them to get training so that they are doing it in a safe way. But providing that opportunity is something the state has done, but I think it's something that we can have the state do more of, but also looking at those public-private partnerships to get creative with where and when it's available.
Thank you. Mr. Condon?
I feel like Mr. Cooper stole my notes. I agree with what he said as well. I would also add that perhaps looking at startup grants, just like with small businesses, to encourage new business, new child care centers to open.
Thank you. Ms. Vossler, what will you do about to promote affordable childcare?
I have some thoughts on this one. First of all, I've been knocking on a lot of doors. Over 2,000, I have knocked personally over 2,000 doors, and I run into a lot of grandparents who are having to provide daycare for their grandchildren, not because they want to, but because it's either not available or not affordable in the communities. My idea is, and stay-at-home moms, that would be great if you could afford to stay at home, but if you're a single mom, you're the breadwinner, and even in a two-parent household, most times both parents have to work to make ends meet these days. My idea is that we take our voucher system that we're doing for private schools and turn it into a voucher for daycare. This would encourage a lot of development of daycares. It would benefit a huge number of Iowans, whereas the private school vouchers benefit a small number. It seems like the ideal solution to me.
Thank you. Representative Wessel-Kroeschell.
Thank you. This is a great question and something that Iowans and people all across the nation are suffering from, and it's keeping people out of the workforce. So when you hear that we are having a hard time finding people to hire, this is one of the problems that we need to address as a state. So we need to promote affordable childcare. One way we can do that is by assisting private industry or private sector in an infrastructure. So helping them build the infrastructure to provide childcare. We have some grants and some money that can go to corporations and businesses to help them provide childcare within their structure. What we have found is that it's a very difficult business to be in, and most businesses don't want a new business. They don't want that kind of problem isn't the right word, but it is an obstacle because there are a lot of regulations and you're caring for our most precious resources. Communities, on the other hand, are looking for resources. So I think we take the money that we are putting into private sector businesses and send it to communities to help them with creating the infrastructure for childcare across the country. So it is a big issue. It's one that we really need to put a lot of thought and effort into, but just ignoring it is one that is really what we've been doing, and I'm very concerned about that at this point.
Question number 3 from the audience. We'll start with Mr. Wilburn. How will you protect the right to access safe and legal abortion in Iowa?
We all will have an opportunity with the constitutional amendment that came forward again. Some bipartisan opposition, not many Republicans voted against this, but so we will all have an opportunity to vote. I will, vote against that effort to make it illegal, but secondly, as part of our People Over Politics agenda in the House Democrats, we introduced last session putting a right to reproductive health care and abortion in the Iowa Constitution. And should you all help us by electing legislators who are willing to put people over politics and not have a legislator in the doctor's office with you when you're making those critical health care decisions, including when, where to have a family and with whom. We can make that change and be proactive with that legislation and put it in the Iowa Constitution.
Thank you. Mr. Condon?
A lot the same as Ross said. The government has no business telling families when or where they can't start a family, what they choose to do with their own bodies. If there were constitutional amendments, put the right to abortion and reproductive health care in the Constitution, I would support that. Or any bill that would be presented that would preserve that right.
Thank you. Ms. Vossler?
Never have I heard a woman say, my gynecologist and I have been taking care of my reproductive decisions for a long time, but you know what's missing in this conversation? a bunch of legislators, predominantly white men with a limited understanding of the human reproductive system. That's what we need to make it better? I don't think so. If you are considering passing a bill that deals with healthcare, one would think you would consult a doctor. That did not happen, and so we have a horrible bill that was shoved through this legislature that is not written in medical terms. It's impossible for a doctor to know what they can and cannot do and when, and this is way too complicated to legislate. It should never have happened. So number one, we roll that back. So you need to vote and elect people who will roll it back, because the lives of your daughters and your granddaughters and your wives and your children, they're all impacted by this. The lives of your son, who may be, who may lose their wife and the mother of their children and be, in that horrible situation. We can do better, and we need to.
Thank you. Representative Wessel-Kroeschell.
Everybody deserves the right to make their own healthcare decisions, and that couldn't be more true than when it comes to reproductive health care. Talk about a private decision that should only be made by the individual involved with her experts. 64% of Iowans believe that abortion should be legal in most cases. 71% of Iowa women want to make their own decisions about reproductive health care. Yet because of a near total ban on abortion that was passed during a special session, that right is being taken away from Iowans. I would support overturning that bill without a doubt. We also need to strengthen that right, and so we need the constitutional amendment that Iowa House Democrats have proposed. It's a much longer process than overturning a law, but we need to do both because we need it in our Constitution. We need to be assured that it would be hard to take that right away from us. We also need to expand access to reproductive health care. We are dead last in the number of OBGYNs to our population. Dead last in the country, and they are leaving faster than we will be able to keep up. And we need to protect access to infertility treatments, in particular IVF, and hormonal birth control, which they will be going after this next legislative session. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move to our question 4. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, this is a question, abortion's a question on which libertarians differ among ourselves and on which different people differ. Now, different cultural traditions have different views of abortion. Some cultural traditions consider it to be murder, which is a body crime, and as such, the government has a right to restrict it. In others, it is not considered a body crime. And so that's why I think the Supreme Court decision that threw it back to the states is the right one. If the majority of the people in the state consider it a body crime, well, then it probably should be illegal, and if the majority do not, then it probably shouldn't, is what I would say. Now, personally, if I were in the legislature, my justification for why murder is wrong is that if the person has part of their brain that would find being murdered aversive, well, that's what makes murder wrong, is you're killing somebody who has a part of the brain that would find murder aversive. And so what that means is I'd favor abortion to be legal up to the development of the thalamus, which is the part of the brain you need to feel pain, which is about 24 weeks. And so if we were to come up with legislature, that would be the cutoff that I would propose. But it concerns me when people can't see the other side of this. This is one where you can see that, different people and different traditions see this in different ways, and we need to be tolerant of that, I think, in a free society.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move now to question 4. I'm going to read a statement from one of the audience members. She says, I'm a mom of a son with autism and a bride-to-be of a U.S. Navy veteran with hemiplegia, autism, kidney failure, and brain damage. What can you do to make Iowa disability friendly and have more resources? I do not want to have to move my family to get better resources for their disabilities. And Mr. Condon, you can begin, please.
Okay. This is something that I actually deal with on a pretty daily basis. One of the things that Iowa failed to do was take expanded Medicaid. That could help alleviate some of that. The rest of the issue as far as services, it really depends on what exactly you're looking for. The best I could say is I'm not actually sure. I would try to make sure that they would have as much accessibility to the services that they could. That's a bad answer.
Ms. Vossler?
Well, I do know that healthcare in Iowa has been suffering, especially since the privatization of Medicaid. Bringing in a for-profit entity to run this only introduced more cost, and they have a built-in mechanism where built-in for them, denial of service, spending less money, providing fewer services means they make more profits for themselves. So they don't have our best interest at heart. I would like to get all profit-driven entities out of healthcare, like insurance, which sucks billions in this country out of healthcare every year and provides absolutely no healthcare. It just provides profits for the people. I know we're suffering, and it needs to be a priority. I'm sorry, the only thing you could do now is elect people who truly care about the citizens of this state and their health care and all of their problems, and will actually try to make your lives better.
Okay, thank you. Representative Wessel-Kroeschell.
Thank you. This is a very good and complex question. We've been working on several issues, unfortunately, in the way of denying services to so many Iowans who are suffering. Just 2 years ago, we did a bill that would make it much harder to get services, predominantly for SNAP, but also for Medicaid. And that bill passed and was signed by the governor, and the application process, the requirements are much more complex than what they need to be, and therefore it has created stumbling blocks, and many people give up and don't get the services that they deserve. As Penny said, when we privatized Medicaid, now much of the public money that we give to Medicaid goes to corporate profits. And the fewer services they provide, the more profits they get. And so many denied and cut services have happened over and over and over. This year we did pass a bill on disability services, mental health and disability services to redesign. There was very little opposition to that bill, but I still think a lot of questions about its implementation and how it will go. It is basically making it more of a statewide system with regions having some sort of input in what needs to be done. I have some good and bad feelings about the bill, and I guess we won't know until it's been fully implemented. But it's a complex issue, and when it was divided by regions, there was $43 million that was not being used because none of the regions could live up to the standards that the state had provided for them. And so now we have $43 million extra that we will be putting into the entire program, which is one of the things I liked about the bill.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper?
Well, I said I was going to answer the questions like Thomas Jefferson would have answered them, and this is one where the Founding Fathers were pretty clear. Let me read you a quote from James Madison, the father of the Constitution. I cannot undertake to lay my finger on that article of the Constitution which granted a right to Congress of expending on objects of benevolence the money of their constituents. Somehow it got the idea that the government is a charity organization. It is not a charity organization. It is an organization to provide the activities that require force. Charity needs to be done by charity organizations, and as the Founding Fathers said, they were scared to death of that, because eventually the people receiving the charity will vote on that basis, and it becomes more and more and more expensive. So no, the government does not have a role in that sort of thing. That sort of thing needs to be done by charities. If we reduce people's taxes, they'd have enough they could contribute to charity and make that happen.
Thank you. Mr. Wilburn?
Privatizing Medicaid as it occurred in Iowa and shows in other states, we, the people, were sold a bad bill of goods. We were told that services would be maintained. We were told under the guise of efficiency, and the result has been people have been denied service. They've been denied care, health, physical and mental health care, in some cases on conditions that there's been a review to evaluate, but there were conditions that weren't going to change, and it was interfering with people. Their inability to get services was interfering with their ability to participate in being a citizen, thriving. And instead of correcting the mistakes that happened with these managed care organizations, we've had round 2 and round 3, bringing on an additional one. I don't know what what the governor expects in terms of a different outcome, but this will be one of those circumstances where time will tell. But you all decide whether you think that the managed care, the privatized system is helpful for Iowans who are just trying to stay healthy, to get healthy, and to be part of the community.
Thank you. Okay. That brings us to the next question. And we'll start with Ms. Vossler. This is an often heard question. What should the Iowa legislature do to promote gun safety?
Well, as a gun owner, I believe that responsible people have a right to own guns. I do not believe that every person should be in possession of a firearm. That's insanity right there. Before I got my first hunting license at 12, and before I could get that license, I had to take a hunter safety course. We require everyone who drives a car to learn how to do so safely and to pass a test showing that they had mastered those necessary skills. I think something similar should be required for guns, because there are a lot of safety rules that I learned in that first hunter safety course that I know they're just handing people a gun with no information on how to safely store it, how to safely use it. Never fire your firearm unless you know what's behind your target. I mean, simple things. Always keep the barrel pointed up or down. So we can and we should. The other thing is that military weapons are made for one thing only. They are to kill as many people as possible, as fast as possible. And no private citizen has the right. There has to be a logical limit. If I want a bazooka or a tank, I should not be able to have one because that's too dangerous. And these AR-47s, whatever they are just should not be, especially in the hands of younger people who, the mentally ill. We have nothing in place to prevent this right now, and we're paying the price.
Thank you. Representative Wessel-Kroeschell.
This is an ongoing question that's been plaguing us for a long time. I support red flag laws. I support permitting, making sure that people who own guns have permits and have past licensing or permitting programming and training. I agree that semi-automatic rifles should not be in public hands, and we should limit the size of magazines. Unfortunately, we have passed permitless carry in this state, and there is a constitutional amendment which has definitely restricted our ability as a state legislature to make laws restricting any use or any gun use. That law, as a matter of fact, just recently went through a court decision, and it looks like that law will now also allow felons to carry weapons without going through anything. So we are in a bad place in this state with gun safety laws. partially because of the constitutional amendment that over 60% of Iowans agreed to 2 years ago. But also now because no matter how hard we said that under this new law, the permitless carry, felons would be allowed to carry, we were told that we were nonsensical and we were, being blowing this out of proportion. But the Supreme Court has now decided that felons can. So we have a lot of work to do.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper?
Oh, this is a nice one where the computer nerds are going to give our freedom back to us here. When I was on the faculty at Iowa State, I was the advisor for the Second Amendment Club. We'd start every meeting with the president would show us the latest gun that he'd made on his $300 3D printer. And I remember one he got off like 30 shots in like 10 seconds from one of them before it melted. So essentially, there's nothing the government's going to be able to do about it. You're going to be able to print any weapon you want and use it, so it really doesn't matter what the legislature does at this point. And contrary to the Democrats that you've heard, no, the Founding Fathers would say you definitely need the average citizen to be able to own military weapons, because ultimately the purpose is to revolt against the government if it starts trampling on their rights. And I have every intention of buying a 3D printer myself and printing a bunch of guns. And if anybody tries to interfere with this citizen's life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness, they're going to get a snoot full of whoop-ass.
Thank you. Mr. Wilburn?
Why would anybody?
I served in the Army National Guard and was trained on the use of weapons, and I do support the Second Amendment, but the times and the context matter. And there's a difference between a handgun to protect yourself, an automatic weapon, a light anti-tank weapon, a cratering bomb. These are all weapons for killing, not for hunting, killing people. We, the people, can also choose whether we want to keep ourselves safe. And countries handle this differently. I saw an interview a couple days ago of some folks from European countries asked whether they would be comfortable coming to the United States. And everyone interviewed said no. They were concerned about the number of weapons. They were concerned about the number of mass shootings. We can decide whether or not we want to help keep each other safe, in particular our children. We all can decide whether we want law enforcement to assist us in keeping ourselves safe. I am not willing to watch another mass shooting and go, oh well, we can't do anything. This is a role we the people can decide we want government to step in.
Thank you. Mr. Condon?
Okay. Like Ross, I was also in the military, trained with rifles to kill. I also support the Second Amendment. I think that what we need to do is I think most of the country agrees we need universal background checks. My brother, who is active military, has a background check done every 6 months for his. So if it's good enough for our military, it should be good enough for us. One of the reasons I feel passionately about this, there are loopholes that people can use to keep their weapons, say, like the boyfriend loophole here in Iowa. A good friend of mine, when I was working at child support, her ex had been abusing her. She got a restraining order, and he ended up waiting outside her place of work and kidnapping her. He had given the guns that were supposed to have been given to the police to his friend, and the police said, well, since the guns were out of the house, that was good enough. He went and got those firearms, and he ended up murdering her. So we need background checks, enforce the regulations that we have now, and I think that's my answer.
Thank you. Our next question, the first response will be from Representative Wessel-Kroeschell. Do you support vouchers? And if you do, How do you propose Iowa pays for the billion shortfall coming up?
No, I do not support vouchers. I believe that public dollars should go to public schools. Currently, our voucher program does not allow for the same regulations of private schools as it does for public schools. Private school tuition has gone up all over the state once vouchers were approved. And so, I don't even know how to describe this, but so many of the people using the vouchers were the people who were already sending their children to private schools. So it's money that we are essentially just throwing away and not investing in our public schools. I have no way to come up with those dollars because I don't approve them. I would support fully funding our K through 12 system. I would support eliminating our ban on our book bans. I would support allowing teachers to do their job and educate kids the way they were taught to do, the way that they have learned to do. We need to put some trust into our teachers and into the system that we have. We have put so many restrictions and strains on them right now that teaching is becoming one of the jobs that people are leaving the fastest. And it's very, very scary for this state to go from #1 in the country in education to someplace in the 20s.
Mr. Cooper, vouchers?
Well, the argument for public funding of education is one of what's called that it's a public, there are positive externalities associated with it. What a positive externality is a benefit to somebody who's not part of the transaction. So even if I don't have kids that go to public schools, I would benefit from somebody who's been in school because they'd be able to, say, read notes that I wrote to them or make change at the grocery store, things like that. But that is an argument for maybe helping people to pay for education. What there is no argument for is for the government itself actually running the schools. Think of what the Founding Fathers would think of this. A board of government officials decides what the kids are going to hear, and a group of government employees implements that lesson. The thought of a government-run school should be as disgusting to an American as the thought of a government-run church. We need a strict wall of separation between the state and education. And so, yes, that's the way we should go, is with vouchers, but not vouchers for just kids who want to leave, but vouchers for everybody. Everybody ought to get $7,000 to pay for education wherever they want, and no schools should be run by the government.
Thank you. Mr. Wilburn?
I just support public dollars going for public education. Our public schools are just that. They are available for all students, no matter their zip code, no matter their background. The vast majority of applicants, recipients for the school vouchers, those young people, their families were already able to afford. They were already attending the private schools. If you live in a rural area, very few of the rural areas have private schools, so that's you're putting at risk support for the infrastructure for schools in our rural areas. Young people who benefit from special ed services and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, if they've got a mental or physical disability that substantially impairs their ability to learn, they get services in the public schools. Private schools, in the vast majority of cases, just don't have the capacity to serve them. We've already got experiences in some of our schools across the state that the private schools retain students who have extra learning supports that they need, waited till the deadline for the count that the state does in terms of enrollment, and then afterwards they waited to get out notice to some of those families that we just don't have the supports to serve your children, so now they're going back to the public schools. Again, I believe there was a small amount of bipartisan opposition, but this is clearly an area that Governor Reynolds supported and forced through, so your vote can make a difference on this.
Thank you. Mr. Condon?
I also support public dollars for public schools. This program has already seen fraud and waste. Rob Sand has already uncovered that, and we've barely begun. The cost overruns are anticipated to increase year after year. The private schools do not have the accountability that our public schools do. This was not asked for by anyone. It's opposed by the majority of Iowans, and it benefits very little.
Thank you. Ms. Vossler?
Okay. This country was founded by immigrants, many of whom came from a country where only the wealthy were educated. They would bring in a tutor to educate their children. When they founded this country, education for everyone was a strong principle for our founding fathers. All of the people who first came to Iowa and settled here for the fertile land, you can look at a map. There's one in Boone County outside what used to be my office that shows something like 80 little one-room schoolhouses. No child would have to walk more than 1 mile to get to school. The citizens banded together, they pooled their resources, they built a little school, they provided food and firewood and a little bit of money for their teachers, and they made sure that every child had an opportunity to be educated, and that was how we began. When I went to school in Montana, I took the Iowa Basic Skills Test. Iowa was the gold standard, and students across this country were measured against Iowa. The underfunding, and Herman Kornbaugh sent me some numbers, pretty much our entire budget surplus, that $2 billion, has come from funding our schools, both our public schools, universities, the regions, all of those below the rate of inflation ever since, at least since Kim Reynolds got in office, and some of it goes back further. But by underfunding those schools, the surplus is off the backs of our students, and they're suffering. Our schools, our teachers, and our students are all suffering. We've been on a big slide to mediocrity, and it's time to end that.
I want to thank the audience for all these wonderful questions. Unfortunately, due to the shortage of time, I won't be able to get to them all. And we also will not have closing remarks because it is about 8 o'clock. But I want to remind everyone to vote on November 5th. Or sooner. If you have already requested an absentee ballot, you have until November 5th at 8 p.m. to deliver that absentee ballot in person to the administration office, 900 6th Street, Nevada, between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. To register to vote, please go to the Story County Auditor's Office to download a voter registration form, or you can register to vote on election day at the correct polling place for your address with proper ID. Or to make it even more convenient for you, we have a table in the back where you can register to vote and or request an absentee ballot. 1 week from tonight, October 8th, we're going to do it again right here at 7 p.m. in this room. We'll be holding the candidate forum for the Iowa Senate. We really hope you'll attend. I want to thank you very much to all the candidates for taking time to share your views and for your commitment to serve us. And thank you to all of you for actively participating in the election process. Thank you again, everybody, and this does conclude our candidate forum. Let's give a hand.